Oh, okay. You'll need to enable share screen from me, Peter.
Okay.
Or anyone. It makes no difference.
Yeah, multiple participants. You should be able to do it now.
Yep, I can. Now I just got to figure out. I think it's screen that I do. One it won't allow and one it will allow. Is that showing my screen now?
I think so.
Yes, it is. Good. So now all I've got to do is, I think I'll close that one down and have a look at some images. So a number of images have come through, and I asked Peter whether he had a resized version of this one.
Yeah, I sent you what I've got, so
That's okay. I'll tweak it if we have to, and go from there. Reply. It will let me.
Looks a bit drastic.
Yeah, it does. It's a little unclear, but they look like a Contophenix Cunninghamianas. Not the best or the most clear image. I'm just seeing if I can forward it, and it's not allowing me to forward it. I don't know why. But I know why, because I'm not in the message. Hang on, let me do this. Save as. I'll just save it and blow it up. Desktop, save, and that should allow us to have a quick look at it. Function D, Windows key D, and there's the image there. And if we open it with Windows Photo Viewer, okay, we should be able to zoom up on that a bit, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, guys, I know it's a little pixelated and I apologize, but let's just discuss this. The question that was raised, and I don't know who asked it, the question raised, is this lightning strike? Is this a fungus? What is it? What's the first thing that comes to your mind, or the first set of things you start to think about when you see this?
Looks like a fungal or an insect eating
Could be
apical medicines.
eating. Again, we don't have any details. While looking at that, that looks like a New South Wales number plate down here. So that's a New South Wales number plate. It won't be any further north than Byron Bay, realistically. But the first thing that really is odd to me is that they've all gone at the same time. So that's the first thing. And that's unusual for a fungus. We don't have any really bad primary pathogens of a Contophenix in Australia. We've got a primary pathogen of Phoenix canariensis that sometimes affects Washingtonia species, or Washingtonia robusta. Now there's only one species, robusta, and robusta folifera.
it looks very even, doesn't it, Mark?
Is it poisoning?
Well, then that's a possibility. What's really odd is the way that the heads have gone on all of them. But poisoning is one possibility, but then why would they be poisoned? And again, unfortunately, we don't have the arborist that's looked at it to tell us, but you can poison palms, there's no question about that. But then why have they collapsed while still being green?
Fair enough.
Pretty odd. One of the things that can give you a tilted head in palms is boron deficiency, but this is extreme. And so, did this happen slowly or did this happen over a period of time? And again, it'd be great if we could have the arborist answer those questions. We could potentially look back at old Street View images, and they would help inform our position. So
I'm just trying to get hold of him, and I've sent him the link, but hopefully
I mean, my gut level feeling is it's abiotic. It's just too uniform to be biotic. That is, I wouldn't have expected one after another. I mean, unless you've got a primary pathogen, remember, is a disease that kills the host regardless whether it's healthy or not. And then why even so all at once? That's pretty freaky, pretty amazing. So my gut level feeling is that it's not biotic, it's abiotic. And I'll just show you so you can say you've seen it. And it's usually nowhere near as drastic or amazing as we've seen there. And sorry, I'll have to go back here. Boron in palms is something that you see reasonably consistently, but they don't go that quickly. So really odd that. So this is boron deficiency in a palm tree. You usually get this wilting head. Sometimes you can get the distorted tissue, but the wilting head, here it is in a contophoenix. And you can see, as I open it up to a bigger one, hopefully, maybe not. Yeah, as it opens a PDF. Yeah, you've got this gradual loss of upright form from boron deficiency rather than just suddenly going. So this effect here of it listing over is not uncommon for boron. So, my answer is it doesn't seem like it's boron, and it doesn't look like it's lightning. If it was lightning, for the heads to go over, you'd expect them to die. Could it be an insect? Yes, but again, the things that would attack the middle of it, a weevil or something like that, for them all to do it at the same time, fairly unusual, fairly unexpected. So, yeah, I'm perplexed by that image. That's certainly would make me want to look around the base of them, first of all, to see if there were the Makita bora or evidence of Makita bora. It just...
You're ruling out lightning, Mark?
It's possible, but the whole row at the same time. So lightning affects in several different ways. It affects by pressure wave. It affects by charge and earthing out. Can it happen? I got a great shot from the last month of a horrible tragedy that occurred in a farmer's paddock where you see 15 or 20 dead sheep. In fact, I'm pretty sure I can pull up fairly quickly. And when you ask why the sheep all of a sudden die, and you look at the tree, you can see the lightning struck the tree. And then in the arcing out process, it's killed the sheep. So it's certainly something that can happen. It's just not something that I'd expect to have happen. So if I go back down, I'm pretty sure I can, if I ask Google, maybe can identify sheep, even if they're cooked.
Doesn't seem to be any scorching or blackening of the palm fronds.
You don't always get, so that's a good comment, Rob. Lightning is so variable because it depends on how it's struck, the strength of that strike, the amount of particulates on the trunk, and so on. So I can show you one that occurred just the other day on a site that I was at, and so I'll diagnose it for you wickedly. It can be very, very subtle in its influence. So you'll have to excuse my going back a fair way. It's this day, and it's this school. And I've gone past the school. Oh, yeah. Okay. So here's the tree. It's Eucalyptus globulus. You can see this side is dead. It's I'll adjust the color for you so that you can make it a little easier. So you can see the dead section here. This is our dead piece. So something caused this to die. And I noticed as it came up the school, it looked like the whole tree was dead, but it's only in fact that one section. And so the first question the school asked was, why did it die? And at close examination, this is what I observed. Does anyone know what these things are?
Mycelium.
They're Lichtenberg figures. They're the result of living tissue gets burnt or damaged by lightning. So subtle as anything on the stem. Enough, in this case, damage has been done to kill the stem, not kill the whole tree. It could have arced out if you go back. You know, it's potentially that, you know, it's maybe jumped across to the basketball hoop or whatever reason, it's just affected one half of the tree. So let me see if I can show you Lichtenberg figures, and I'll spell it wrong and it'll not find it for me. Lichtenberg. Let's see if that's close enough. Oh yeah, there we are. So these are Lichtenberg figures on a Crimbia maculata. It's fairly obvious.
We can't see it, Mark.
Oh, I can't?
No.
Okay.
Zoom in.
I can see just fine.
Yeah, I can see it, Mark.
I can
Yep.
see it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can see
might
it.
just be a little slow because I'm putting up a lot of bandwidth. So sorry about that. And I'm on a high speed, but that's the best I can do. Can you see it now, Michele?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so this is the lightning, the physical burning from the lightning in this case. And people use this in craft now with high voltage differentials between two spots. So lightning is a difficult one to spot, but usually when it affects a palm, it kills the apical meristem. And once that apical meristem's dead, palms, most palm species, and Echinophoenix certainly fits in that group, have lots of parenchyma, lots of living cells. And when living cells suddenly die, everything wants to eat them. And so they tend to rot, they tend to smell putrid, they're horrible to remove. There's just nothing in that image that lets me think that there's lightning. Now I can show you lightning in palms, and let's see whether it looks similar. I've spelled it wrong, haven't I? L-I-G-H-T, N-I-G. Just find it. Okay, so this is the results as the whole top is gone. And so there's some similarities there, but notice the next palm is unaffected. So, you know, it's that weird thing. In this case, this is a cordyline. It was affected. 3 or 4 plants were affected where there was direct physical contact or arcing out through them. Here, you know, the top's gone almost straight away. It's brown, whereas those tops are green. Just suspicious in my mind. Not saying that it's not, just saying it just doesn't gel in as being lightning strike. Here's a lightning in a palm. And if we zoom in, you can see here's where that pressure wave has caused the tissue to blow apart. Can you see that there? So we're looking for suspicious things that give us that. It just is missing anything on that image apart from all the tops coming over, and the tops are coming over from dehydration. Could it have been the exit? So as lightning leaves the roots, it damages them. The answer is yes. And could it have done the whole row? Possibly, but just doesn't look like it. Next question is, according to anyone around, was there lightning at the sort of time we're seeing the damage occurring, which is probably, based on that image, maybe 6 weeks or so beforehand.
But the photo plants, they look really green and healthy. So
Yeah, it was, as I said, it was an odd. Peter, you've disabled screen sharing. I don't know why it's done that. I'm scaring. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I can.
Just sent me this message saying that you had. So yes, the jury's out on that. I'd want more information, and that's going to be a situation you're going to find yourself in as a consultant on a regular basis, where you say, "These are some possibilities." Let's talk about the prognosis. What do you think the prognosis is for these?
Removal.
They're going to die.
They're going to die. So it may well be that all that we can do is give a good prognosis. There is no future for any of those palms. So those palms sit in the removal category. So at least we can give some answers. Would I try and restore them? No. For that, to have lost that amount of turgidity in the stem, they're done. They're finished. So,
Mark, sorry, I missed the first half of this, trying to get in the link. How soon after a lightning strike would you expect to see damage like that?
within 2 to 6 weeks.
Right.
And usually for that sort of damage, there'd be other indicators. So, and again, this is that difficult bit. It looks like there's a plant at the back here. Has it got burnout on it or not? If there's some burning on the foliage of that as well, then, that sort of supports. It doesn't look as though there's any burning down here, but, in any of that root, was there any evidence of anything that had been burnt? Lightning blows tips of roots. It blows off tissue from pressure waves. It does a lot of damage, but so uniformly on so many, that's a pretty unusual strike.
Have the tops of them been cut, or is something happened? I'm looking on the world's smallest phone. I can't.
They've collapsed over, so they've lost
Right.
the apical area of the palm has lost turgidity very
Right.
rapidly. So it's affected a large amount of parenchyma there. And I would have expected with lightning for that to have browned before it collapsed over like this. So again, all that I could say to the person is we need to do more investigation. I would be checking for evidence of drill holes. I'd be, unless other plants were affected, then you might be looking at other things. But, typically for lightning to do that much damage, you'd expect some of the vegetation below to be damaged. On occasions, you'll see lightning kill a tree and it won't be very obvious. There won't be any physical blowing off of bark. It'll just be the exit damage through the root system that's killed it. But you'll often see the grass around the base of the tree will burn, and that can sometimes burn for 200 to 500 mils out from the base. So again, something to keep an eye out for. Okay, so that's that one. Let's then go to a whole pile more of these. I don't know the answers, which is great. I love it. Give you some good general ones, Michele, for some of yours. But we can at least look at, again, in each case, how should we be managing and what should we be doing? So if I can go to S Drive and photos, should be there. And the photos from others. This just allowed me to do them all in one go. Tips for this month. Okay. So looking them one at a time, there's a nice shot here. Anyone want to guess? No
That's
guess?
cicada.
It's a borer.
Cicada, but it's actually a moth. This is a wood moth. And actually, it's not the moth, it's an exuve. I know we used that word a few tips ago. Exuve simply means the shed skin.
Do they come in a long and casing that hangs off the trees to start with?
It comes out of the stem itself through an almost perfectly round hole, Vicky. And this
Okay.
moth, this is Endoxyla. Endoxyla is just a wonderful plant. It's on a eucalypt, is that right, Michele?
Acacia, I think.
Actually,
maybe-
it might not be Endoxyla then. So this is a wood moth. It could also, now I'm trying to think of, what the one is on acacia. This is the same family or same genus as the widgety grub from inland Australia. So these moths, fascinating life cycle to them, often 2-year life cycle, round holes, big injuries, and we don't know about them until they come out because they're eating in the wood. So we call these things xylophagus. Phagy means to eat. Xylo is wood, xylophagus. So these are xylophagous insects. Because they're eating on the inside, they don't damage the cambium, and we don't get to see them until they come out. Just before they pupate, they eat everything up to the bark, nice round hole. Why is it round? It's to do with the shape of the head. So the shape of an insect's head determines the shape of the hole, which is fascinating. So these guys have got a rounded head, make a nice rounded hole. And when they come out, they leave their exuve, the moth comes out, opens up, and then flies off or walks away. A number of these are, in fact, flightless females. So they've got wings, but they're too big and too heavy to be able to functionally fly. And those that are in that category lay their eggs. The eggs, and the males come and fertilize them. The males are flighted, but the females aren't. They lay their eggs, and when the eggs hatch, they balloon. And I know we've talked about that before. Ballooning is this process of spinning a small web. On Endoxyla, which is in the eucalypts, they disappear for a year. We don't really know what happens to them during that year. In the second year, they come back, they bore into the tree, and then they farm callus. Okay, they make callus grow on the inside of the hole that they've made, and they eat on that callus. And that callus is low in lignin in its early stages, and they farm that, which is fascinating. Then they build a tunnel, pupate above, then come on out, and the whole cycle starts again. So 2-year life cycle on most of them. The only time we get to find out about them is when they come out, or when you cut down a tree and you see the round hole. They seldom get to significant levels in a tree, although I've seen a tree with 15 or 20 of them at one go. Tree survived and was surviving. The real big issue with them is the yellow-tailed black cockatoo. Now, I don't know whether you get yellow-tailed black cockatoo down in Victoria. You do?
Not many, but you can see them.
Okay, they're an insectivorous bird, so they have a high insect consumption of the diet, and they will fell a tree of 150 mils or so in diameter to get the grub out, which is quite fascinating. So they're a problem in forestry when you've got even age plantings and you get 200 larvae come out and spread around, then all of a sudden a year later start chewing their way in, and the yellow-tailed black cockatoos come in, and they know they're there, they tap a bit, they tear a piece out and then perch themselves on that piece or hold onto that piece and then start ripping out the tree, and they will take out huge chunks. I do have an image of it if you'd like to see it, but needless to say, I would not want to be bitten by a yellow-tailed black cockatoo. But that's a great part of the natural ecology. And I think, encouraging that. So we have several badly formed white cedars that we got from our wholesale nursery in a trial that we did. And we keep those trees down the back corner of the paddock purely to encourage the yellow-tailed black cockatoos to come and visit us on an annual basis. And in that case, they're after longicorn, Pittosporum longicorn grows in Melia, whole polyvother, it's a polyphagous beetle, and they'll come in and they'll just take branches, 50 to 100 mils in diameter and shred them to pull out the longicorn larvae. So that's the bigger problem with that. So yeah, I wouldn't be panicking. It's an acacia, Michele, it's probably not going to do huge length of time unless it's a melanoxylon. And then they tend to be longer lived, but most of them tend to be fairly short lived. Okay. This came from an Alocasuarina. I've identified the genus based on the disease.
Yes, correct.
Anyone want to guess? What is it?
Is it a type of insect gall?
Andrew, spot on. It's a Hemiptera gall. In this case, it's a little insect called Cylindrococcus, and you can identify the insect from the gall. But what is really amazing is if I blow that right up, that there is the scale that you normally see on the stem. The scale is the leaf. It's a highly reduced leaf. In this case, it's been expanded, and you can count the number of scales all the way around, and it's true to species. So all that's happened is the insect has altered the hormones in the plant and the way that's grown. Now, we're not good enough at doing this yet as people, but I suspect the day will come where people will be able to take the same chemicals and manipulate plants in the same manner. And I think that's just wonderful that, here is a little creature that can do it. Typically the female, this is a female gall. The female will live for a couple of years. She's apterous. Apterous is, again, that lovely word. Terra for pterodactyl means winged, dactyl dragon, winged dragon, terra. So apterous means without wings. So she doesn't ever have wings, and she stays in a state called neonate. Again, these are just nice words when you're communicating with an entomologist and you want to help them identify something. Neonate means that she looks like a young, adolescent thing. She's not got anything that suggests she's reached maturity, except she's sexually mature. And so she stays in there. The male enters in. Some males have rather long appendages and stay on the outside, depending on how it goes in terms of the Hemiptera. But this particular insect only occurs on Alocasuarina. So we can identify, again, Alocasuarina is based on a gall. So we can identify the species based on the gall, and we can identify that's an Alocasuarina based on the gall. So it's pretty neat. Well done, Michele. Okay, obvious what it is. It's a dead mouse. It's actually a moth. There's two shots of it, and that's as good as I could get for you, Michele. The images aren't great enough to resolve or sort out, but at least we know it's a moth. There is one of the things that is interesting is this pinking color here, and I don't know how accurate your colors are in terms of your rendering. So a few more good images would be great, and try and pick a neutral background. But I talked about this last block, and if I can, don't want to open that. Where's my, did I close Chrome? No, I didn't. I didn't think I did. If I go back to the images.
Those colors are pretty accurate, Mark.
Sorry?
the colors are actually quite accurate to, that's my hand in the picture.
Oh, okay. So Leslie, you took the shot. So it just fades out against the surrounding things. Is it dead?
Sorry about that. It had a little bit life left in it. I think it was on its way out.
Yeah, okay. It just looked abnormal. For a moth of that size, I'd have normally expected its wings to be together, and that would have given us a little bit more. But I talked about this process of using Google Lens, and what's really fascinating is Google have just updated their Google Photos system to make that even easier. And here it is now on the right-hand side. Google Lens comes up automatically if you subscribe to Google Photos, and it's already picked up that I'm probably wanting just the moth image to be searched. And so it's already done that. Bogong moth, it's too big for a bogong moth. A giant wood moth, so Endoxylon, we talked about that beforehand. It just, the pink is a little unusual. And the patterning's not right on the wings. So again, you're going to end up spending a fair bit of time if you want to go much more than Lepidoptera. Apart from that component, it does look good. Now, one of the things that you have given me some information on is the earlier shot was from acacia, a wood moth from acacia. And the question is, could this be the same moth that's coming out of your acacias at this time?
I don't think so. But did you take the photo, LJ?
That was in,
Because
I think it was Northern Midlands.
Yeah, look,
yeah, both from Tasmania. Yeah.
but Tasmania.
Yes.
They're both from Tasmania.
Yes, on different.
You've been down.
towns.
You've been down in Tasmania with Rob and the crowd.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Oh boy. Full marks. So yes, it could be quite easily then one of the acacia wood moths. So I'll happily put a little bit of extra time into trying to see if I can find what we've got in that regard. So certainly the body size, and you can see, you know, that's a female. That's a lot of body weight, and you can understand why females in particular have this trouble being able to take off. They've spent a whole lifetime up to this moment. They've got no feeding mouth parts. They're going to die within a week or two, and they will lay huge numbers of eggs. So, and, you know, certainly when you get up into the Northern Territory or outback Queensland and upper part of Southern Australia, the importance to the Indigenous community of these sort of moths important. The larvae is delightful. They assure me, I've never had them. I've had just the longicorn larvae, but high in omega-3 fats, good eating. You know, bake them up in the oven for 10 or 15 minutes and serve them with some satay sauce, and apparently they're delightful. Let them purge for a few days before you eat them. That's all. And they get gritty otherwise. So that's a neat little find. Yeah, I'd forgotten. Rob did mention that he'd come across you, Michele, in the situation there. So I'd forgotten about that. What will make this potentially easier to identify is the patterning on the wings. So I will happily put a little bit more time on that. So that's that one. Okay. Again, I'll zoom in. This is what we're concerned with here. And this is not too hard to identify. What's it look like? It's a weird looking thing, isn't it? First question I've got is, why did you take a shot of the top side and not the underside?
Because I saw it landed on my sleeve.
It jumped onto your pants. If you're wearing pants like that,
Yeah,
no
that's
yeah. So this is indeed a plant hopper. And it's a flat-headed plant hopper. And typically the flat-headed plant hoppers, they have this sort of protuberance of the exoskeleton that goes all the way over the head and conceals it. If you turned it the other way up, you'd see the proboscis, and they're right across Australia. So there's a whole pile of different species. Identifying species, I'm past that. I'm not even going to try it. Just get it to you in the right group, and you can go from there. Hemiptera, readily controllable. Do they get out of whack? Occasionally. It's not commonplace, but occasionally they will get to ridiculously high populations, and then they do become problematic. They're related somewhat to the cicadas, so they're closer into that group. I don't know whether they're xylem or no, they must be phloem feeding because they exude honeydew. So I think they're probably phloem feeders. So yeah, in most cases, you're not going to need to worry about them. Every now and again, when they get to huge proportions on a tree, you could control, and then it's either direct spray with the pyrethroid or pyrethrum, or a use of a neonicotinoid. I don't know what the efficacy is from the spinosad groups. There's new insecticides that are really desirable environmentally, but I would probably be looking at something like a imidacloprid injection as probably the easiest way. Okay. Again, don't know species. That makes it difficult, doesn't it? But I do notice something that's pretty unusual about it. What's unusual?
Hairy, the humps.
Hairy, more than just hairy.
The humps.
Yeah, the tussocks they're called. So this is a tussock moth, Limantrotridae. And I can't tell you the species because there's not enough photographic information. You would want to try and get that top, back, bottom, 3 sides at least, or 2 sides. So you want to try and see what's happening in behind the hairs to try and see whether you can do it. But this is a big group of caterpillars. We have them in Australia in a fair number. I don't think we've got too many exotics. But what is these hairs are urticating. Is that they cause irritation. I admit, as a young kid, finding one that had spun a cocoon, taking the cocoon and putting it down someone's back, and learning about how irritating it could be. Since then, I've had a number of people get affected. The worst of these has a very short lot of tufts that are quite inconspicuous, and that's our Euproctis edwardsii, or the brown-tailed mistletoe moth, or brown mistletoe moth. And it's the most urticating caterpillar that we know of in Australia. And perhaps in the world. It is just plain excruciating on the human flesh. And all it does is, as the hairs contact, it causes a reaction in the skin, a dermatitis, a contact dermatitis. And I have seen guys literally scratch their skin off. So they've taken physical chunks to try and do it. When you get irritated by something like this, or any of the things, when you're working with plants, the appropriate move is to resist at all costs scratching. And one of the reasons why is, in this case, those little hairs, and I do have them at a high magnification, they've got thousands, well, not thousands, certainly hundreds of little barbs on each one of those hairs. And every time you move it, every time you scratch it, you move it. Every time you move it, you create more irritation. So golden rule, pretty well any plant material, if all of a sudden you start getting an allergic reaction you think that comes from either the plant or something on the plant, is to not scratch. It's to use either cold water to cool it down, stop it from being so itchy. Put gloves on, tie your hands behind your back, whatever you've got to do. Avoid rubbing. The more you rub, the worse it gets. And I do know of one arborist that had a wonderful V-shaped scar, as I said, from physically scratching. the skin off, which is pretty scary. So nasty when it gets irritating. Seldom do they ever get to high populations. I can't think of any time where I've seen them at high levels. Sort of, maybe a couple of dozen in a tree might be normal. And you think of it, trees are big things. One of the things that you've probably never done is looked at a tree and said, how many insects are in that tree? And when we cut them down, we put them through a chipper, we still don't answer that question. Every now and again, some researcher does this wonderful process. They go out with a fogger and they fog the canopy of a tree with drop sheets below and collect the insects. And you would be amazed at how many thousands of insects and dozens and sometimes hundreds of different species there are within the tree. And that's within a moment of time. That varies over a year. So they do support a large population of insects, and they've got massive redundancy. That is, trees don't require 100% efficiency of their system. They could lose 25, 30, 35, 40% of their canopy without it necessarily causing the death of the tree or significant stress or even strain. They've already planned that into the system. I know I'm anthropomorphizing and I know that that's wrong, but you get the concept. They've got this process of saying, well, look, we can't run it fine to the line because we could have a whole pile of things come in. And we don't want just 10 caterpillars all of a sudden putting us into stress. We want lots of damage to get us to that stress mark. So generally, as I said, the Mantriidae is something that I'd be concerned about, apart from getting itchy myself. On the other hand, this can strip trees, does get to high levels. Whoever took the shot needs to do some still work on their photography, but it's obviously a beetle. Can we agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we can't do with ease here, and we could have done with a slightly better shot, is count the number of segments on the antennae. We've got 11. We would have known there was Christmillidae or Christmillidae, but that's what it is. It's a leaf beetle, and this particular one's Paropsis. Paropsis is the genus, and they feed on eucalypts, and they can do a reasonable amount of damage. Typically, they come out around about Christmas time, summer, that warm period, and the numbers can get up fairly high on occasions. There's been a problem in forestry. There's been a big problem in forestry in Tasmania. I know they were doing trials and trying to have sacrificial trees, that is, trees where they poisoned one tree that they were allowed to die and use that to kill off or try and drop down some of the numbers. It wasn't overly successful, but it was worth the try. Again, beetles, Coleoptera, are able to be killed with the same group of insecticides, things like neonicotinoids or imidacloprids, things like that, pyrethroids, pyrethrum. Pyrethrum, you need direct contact. They're a little bit more resistant to the neonicotinoids than Hemiptera, so slightly higher rate. And if you're in Melbourne, you'd be seeing something like elm leaf beetle is in the same family. Okay, it's Christmillidae. If you've got lily pillies, every lily pilly now in Australia is being attacked by that little green lily pilly leaf beetle. Propsitis calypso, again, same. Pittosporums, right throughout the country now, we've managed to spread the Pittosporum leaf beetle, and particularly it's nasty on the smaller dwarf varieties. So there are things culturally that we can do. And I dare say if we could grow nice dwarfed eucalyptus hedges, these guys would hammer the hedges in no time. So small things. Beetles, and I know I've talked about this before, these little guys, a fig leaf beetle is same family again. they tend to protect themselves by just dropping to the ground. I don't know whether I showed you. Do you know how a beetle flies? Has anyone ever watched that? Go to a YouTube channel and watch beetles flying. They have a folded wing. You might not have noticed that. The wing actually has to fold up. So to fly, it's got to pull these elytra, these outer hard shell wings out. And then because it doesn't have two wings that are going to do the flying, it has this big fold out wing. So it's got to open that up. That takes time. So often the defense mechanism of leaf-eating beetles is simply, let me fall to the ground. I've got a crash pad on automatically. And this is small in size. The smaller you get, the less the consequence of a fall. Okay, which means if I fall out of a tree, McKelly, I'm dead. You fall out of a tree, you'll get a break.
More than a break.
But you get my point, is it's about the size and the density of the material go through. So the smaller you get, the less the consequences of falling through air and hitting the ground. And you've all seen that, for example, with a possum. Possum, if you fell a tree and there's a possum at the top, the things will just get up and run away because they're small and light. So relatively the process of coming down and hitting the ground is not as bad. Which brings us to the Robinia. And I don't know, has Peter disappeared? Maybe
that's mine, Mark.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mark. This is a good set of shots. The tree's got something gone wrong and it's really obvious. What it specifically is, Mark, is not so obvious. Again, so it's one of those wonderful things. We'll get some things about it sorted out and other things we won't. One of the things that's really interesting is it's got fly maggots.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think they kind of looked a bit more like a Slater type.
Yeah, they're fly maggots.
Okay. Right, yeah. It was really moist under there.
Yeah.
So,
so there's been a whole pile of tissue that's died suddenly and not been used by a lot of other things except maybe some bacteria. And these guys have come in as a secondary thing and done some cleaning up, which raises the question, why has this died suddenly? I don't know the answer for you, Mark, but we're going to figure out what you should do, and the management and the treatment's going to be the same. What are some things? Possibility, lightning strike again. Lightning strike causes lots of rapid death.
I think it's a fungal issue killing the cambium. There's a shot of it. There's a wound at the very base of the tree, an old wound.
Yep.
Down in there, where potentially it's all started, and it seems to run up the length of it, and it's killed. There's 3 litres, the same size, and it's killed more or less 1 litre, as in that's it.
That here, yep.
So, and tap sounding around, which is how I found, that the bark was disconnected, was that, it seems to go a fair way around that right litre.
Yeah, there's certainly a connection to the right litre. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm not sure that it's fungal.
Okay.
And the reason I'm not sure that it's fungal is...
Can you go back a couple of photos?
Sorry?
Can you go back a photo too?
Yep.
With the base of the tree?
That's the base of the tree, yep.
What are those circular holes there?
I don't know what the curse is on there, but that black round thing is some kind of irrigation thing.
Yeah, irrigation stake.
Yeah, years ago engulfed.
Yeah, and that is just bark, that round bit to where your mouse is, and then to the left again.
Yeah,
that's quite round. So you go on top of it, and if you keep going to the left, a bit low to the base, just up a bit. Keep going up a bit. Slightly to the right. That thing there. Is it me just seeing something or not?
It's just shading, I believe.
Shading.
It's a margin of the wound that's separated, and there could be a void under there still, or it could be going back to good tissue. Yeah, the reason I'm not convinced that it's fungi is fungi are usually fairly good at mobilizing themselves against plant tissue, And those fungi that kill plant tissue, living plant tissue, are called pathogens. And they usually are not going to give up their food source to a secondary guy like the fly larvae. And there's just, I'm trying to think of what fly that is, but it's a fly larvae. I recognize it. So it's Diptera. And so that makes me think that something has made it die back along that way. Now, Mark, whereabouts are you located?
Orange in New South Wales, Central West.
Yep, okay. First thing I'd think about is, has there been an accidental or intentional poisoning?
Potentially, I looked into that. Well, I thought about that with all that branch that's died off has got some younger shoots on it.
Yeah, it absolutely has.
Those young shoots, I got a few of them down, and they look quite normal. It just looks like late shoots. There's no discoloring of it apart from the slight yellowing of the color of the leaf. It seems to be just a smaller version of a mature leaf. So there was, but potentially when it comes to, there were suckers coming up in the garden bed, and it's near a neighbour's fence. So whilst the client doesn't use poisons to kill that, maybe the neighbour was doing that with the Robinia suckers coming up for the lawn.
Robinia suckers. The other thing it could be, and I always worry about it, is the things like the once a year Parthen garden weeders and the dicambas, which are often used for bindii treatment or broadleaf weeds in lawn. And they both can have a bad effect. Glyphosate can have sublethal damage. And I know I've showed you pictures of that previously. Just so it just doesn't reek of fungus. The second thing that is an issue with fungus is why just there and why not spread? Because this has behaved as a pathogen if it's killed this. That is, it's killing living tissue. I understand decay in dead tissue because we're just relying on the structure and the presence of water and the extractives that are already in it. But here, it's definitely been live tissue that's been affected. It's the cambium zone. If that was a fungus, I would have expected, as I said, the fungus to dominate and for that problem to spread. That is, why just go up? Why not continue to colonize? If you're effective about killing that much, you've got a whole tree there to eat.
Yeah.
And so when you see those nasty ones, Phytophthora, Armillaria, Phylinus noxious, the whole tree goes. It's not an option. So again, I could be completely wrong. This could be fungal. Don't eliminate that possibility. I'm going to what, from a diagnostic position, I would be most likely to conclude that there's something that has affected it that's not pathogenic. So lightning strike, poisoning, root severance, and root severance on Robinia, I wouldn't expect that. I mean, root severance on Robinia.
There was some girdling under the soil surface, but it didn't look major. Unfortunately, I didn't dig. Have a
look, and I agree with you. It's certainly not sufficient to see what we're seeing there.
Yeah, that's an old wound too. Like that area there, like it's quite old.
Yeah.
And that bit that's missing bark, like it's
So it's just that top bit that's really odd, and it's this shot that makes me think we've got something else that's happened.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, further investigation might find you otherwise, but that's where I'd be starting. Is it is inconsistent with fungus. That's not saying you couldn't have something, and it's more consistent with an abiotic disease.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Just
now? Prognosis and management. First of all, we want to know, is the wound margin starting to stabilize?
Didn't appear so.
Yeah, so one of the things you could do, and it's really out of fashion, but it's worthwhile looking at doing, is cutting the margin. So going back to, so you're just touching the live tissue along the edges and opening that wound up to sterilization. Sterilization will occur from just UV.
Okay.
And then you can see if you're getting wound wood develop in the remaining portion, then fine, we're over and past the problem. So that's one thing. The second thing is, often when these guys are feeding, sometimes there can be secondary chemicals that are produced, particularly when your material's rotting away. Was there a smell of rotting at all? Do you know, Mark?
Yeah, under the bark there, that sort of brown, slimy sort of inner bark, the dead candy, quite pungent. But
yeah, so that's occurs because our living tissue that's there in the cambium and the adjacent phloem and xylem has died rapidly, and the sugars that are there, starches and as straight sugars, so sucrose, for example, in the transport system, they start to break down. So things, small single-celled fungi, yeast get in, and it starts to ferment, and that's that rotting smell you smell. And so again, it just says not fungal. I'd be really surprised if that was the case. So that fermenting process produces a series of byproducts, one of which is alcohol, and alcohol is phytotoxic, so it actually kills living tissue. So again, good reason to think that opening that up might tell you. Now, as I look at this side here, that looks like there's wound wood being produced already, but it may not be. It may just be the.
I think that's it. That's an old ribbing. What you're saying there.
It's possible, Mark. I don't, again.
Yeah, there's a couple of ribs running up there of sort of stronger, where wood tissue's been put on by, potentially.
Well, that would be my first thing: is open it up, remove the perimeter of the wound back to live tissue, and cut the dead portion out. The dead portion is not going to survive. That's patently obvious. So that's going to go.
Mark, when you're cutting the perimeter of the wound, should that be done with a sharp knife or is a chainsaw okay?
No, chainsaw's horrible. My favorite tool is a box knife, and I'm just used to using it. Chisel and hammer is the old-fashioned way, and it's probably a good way of doing it.
And do you make the cut on a slight angle?
The thickness of the bark and rubinia is probably not an issue, and realistically, the critically living part of the bark, the phloem, is not a very thick layer. It's probably in most cases less than, a few millimeters.
So do you make the cut on a slight angle towards the inside of the wound, or you just
square it off?
Square it off, okay.
The tree is going to deal with the tissue when we get it back to live tissue, and we don't have a problem. And what we want to see is some wound wood being produced. Over time, the stem's going to start to get some decay in it, and provided the tree puts on enough new growth, it doesn't care. That looks like about maybe a third of the tree of the circumference may have been affected. A 1/3 opening in the base of a tree is not an issue. So I think the tree is worthwhile saving. What will happen is where this big portion here is being taken out, this area to the side will be stimulated quite rapidly, and you'll find that it will fill in and take advantage of that fairly quickly when it starts to grow next. So
yeah, I've got some issues with the included junctions of the base of the other two, and now that exposed bigger leader is now gone, they're going to be exposed to new winds. I've sort of I've either condemned it, or we're giving them two options: condemn or drastic reduction on the other two. And there's no form left in the tree anyway once that right leader is gone.
Yeah,
but yeah, that low left limb is a fair issue.
It is. I wonder though how good we are with our included junctions. And I know I've discussed this in relation to risk previously. First of all, let me say I'm useless at risk assessment. I go out and look at trees and say, that's perfectly good. And it fails. And I look at things and say, they're going to fail. And 10 years later, they're there. So I've got a Robinia that has a codominant stem that's splitting. Peter's seen it. It's in the middle of, I've got to be careful. It's in the middle of Penrith. I don't want them to go and remove it. And so, again, I can see the codom and I can see the split. I can swipe my credit card down probably half a metre below the junction. And it's been like that now for probably 15 years. Would have I expected it to have failed by now? The answer is yes. But I often find these things don't work like that.
The other thing to consider when you're thinking about the risk from the tree failing is what's the target? I mean, that's what should drive it.
Yes, and the target at the time when failure is most likely to occur. So I had a really exciting Saturday here. We got a southerly bus to go through and we had near gale winds, and I was able to record it on video. And now I've put that link in my school report so they can see what it looks like. It was so exciting to actually video it and get it right. And again, I'm amazed at what didn't fail during those winds. And these are trees with, cupboard door failures that are splitting, things that have come partially apart a decade or so ago, and they're still sitting there. That's winds that were getting up to 62 or so kilometres an hour. That's not sufficient to cause failure. Now, it's interesting. What do you think happens to people during those conditions? Most, except boys between about the age of about 8 and about 16, and they want to go outside and say, hit me, hit me, hit me, and try being the moving target. I don't know what it is about them, but it's just my experience with young boys. And I was conscious as I was videotaping it that I was in outside my office. There's a large area because there's a helipad. So I was conscious that I needed to be aware that branches could fly around in those sort of winds. So very quickly, you can end up with a branch going, 15 or 20 meters if it breaks. So most people would seek shelter. And the last thing that goes with it is, okay, let's just assume that these codominant stems are increasing the likelihood of failure. And let's say that they use their yard a fair bit. Let's go through all those bits and pieces and let's compare it with those other things that are horrible, like beds. Okay, remember, beds kill more people than trees by about 12, stairs by about 100. We should be terrified going up and down stairs, and yet we all do it. Cars are just horrendous. Our risk of harm in a car or from driving or from being hit by a car sits in Australia at about 1 in 10,000. Trees sit at about 1 in 10 million. That's 1,000 times lower. And as I look at this, yeah, it's not a great tree, Mark, and I agree. I have no problems with it going, but I'd have no troubles with it staying. From a risk perspective, from longevity.
You certainly wouldn't take it out because of risk unless there's some massive target under it that you're concerned about.
That's why there's a problem with that part of this particular tree, is that they're about to put a new they're renovating. So at the moment it'll clip the end of a house building and take out a gutter, no big deal. But they're going to build into it, which will then remove the Callery pear, which has been doing what they do and falling apart over the last 5 years. And so it's going to be completely, newly exposed, and its target is increasing. So
yeah, the gut level feeling is just a building. And I know it sounds horrible, but those of you who asked for it, I know Peter Sent is looking at that health value of trees. As I look at this tree, it's probably giving $200 or $300 worth of health benefits back to the community. Maybe not as high, Mark, because you're out west and your population density is a lot lower. But if you're talking about Sydney, you know, this is
Still looks
4,
like
5.
a pretty still looks like a pretty urban setting, Mark.
Yeah, Orange is not too bad though. It's although the newer areas of Orange are getting pretty horrendous. I hate to say it. The older areas were quite green and quite thing. But yes, there's harm that we don't think about. And I know I talked about that, and then shortly afterwards, and I'll show it to you. And if you want, you can stop the video when you're playing it back and find them.
So how do we feel about natural bracing for these trees with included unions? Was there any present for this Robinia or the one that you were talking about, Mark?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm of the inclination to say that bracing has probably got some benefits. You know, whether that be using rods, so bolting them, or
No, I'm talking about natural bracing.
yeah, the dilemma with natural bracing is how do you create it?
Well, the tree creates it.
Yeah, if it's happening naturally, that's great. If it's not there, so if you've got natural bracing occurs when tree parts essentially cross over or interlock with each other, and that helps stop the failure. So if it's not there, it's hard to introduce. If it is there, that's something you take into consideration. I recall going to a school down the southern Illawarra end of the world, and I was called out because there was a prunus that had a highly included junction, and the two stems had crossed over, gone right past each other. So there's no way that you could pull it apart if you used an excavator. But it was an included junction, and the asset management team had picked up that it was an included junction and said, this tree is high risk. And so they closed the staff car park whilst they're waiting for me to assess this tree. And I said, how can it fail? It would have to pull wood through wood to fail. It's not going to happen. So yes, where we've got good natural bracing, we don't need to do anything. We just take that into consideration. But if I can for you.
I would like to say something about the tree falling on a structure. Just before Christmas, and came across this probably 20-meter tall liquid amber, lost a branch, fell on an abandoned house. I'm talking about the branch probably 35 centimeters in diameter, 6-7 meters long, you know, very sizable branch, probably 25% of the tree came down and broke 6 tiles on this abandoned house, and you know, had a decent fall of maybe 6 or 7 meters before he hit the roof. So houses are not that weak either. So
I think all of us, if we sit back and think about it, would agree that trees that fail do a lot less damage than what we might anticipate. I mean, the number of times that they manage to not hit a building is phenomenal. And when they do hit a building, they are absorbing a lot of energy in the failure component. So there's a difference. If you'd cut that same branch, Michele, if you cut an undercut, top cut, and let it drop on the building, it would have done 4 or 5 times more damage because the energy is not being absorbed in the breaking process.
It's often it's often the soft branchy bit that hits the building, not the hard solid bit.
Well, yeah, that's true too. So I just thought I'd share with you these references here. You can come back and find them later on. But, you know, urban green space, tree canopy, and 11-year risk of dementia. So we know that trees have a direct effect on dementia. Sorry, I'll make that larger for you, Mark. I can see you. That will make it easier. Yep. Then we get green space and cardiovascular health in people with type 2 diabetes. That's nice. Urban green space, tree canopy and prevention of cardiometabolic diseases, a multi-level longitudinal study of 46,000 Australians. That's a lot. So this is not small number stuff. This is big. Gets even better. A systematic review of health, that's fine. Here's the Lethia Communities, Healthier Hearts, an Australian cohort study of 104,725 adults tracking cardiovascular events and mortality across 10 years of linked health data. So we don't see the connection between health and trees. But it's there. I noticed one just came out of the UK in the last week or so. So you can set yourself up with an alert to tell you anytime that trees hit the news. And this particular one said that by increasing the global canopy, the canopy in our cities to 30% would result in a 0.5 degree drop in temperature. And then they estimated that in terms of lives saved. And I say this, and I've said it before, but I'll say it clearly. Our single worst day of heat wave death in Australia killed substantially more people than have been killed since white people came to Australia by accidental tree failure. The single one worst day killed more people. Now,
we've had a discussion. I remember having a discussion with you, Mark, where I think I've got this right, that you're saying that the greatest risk from trees is to remove them. So you get
if it's a healthy tree, and that's right. So and that's the dilemma I've got, Mark, is that to me is a healthy tree with problems. So I would be saying to the householder, look, council's going to support the removal of it. It was Sydney-based. Don't worry about that. But you probably don't need to remove it from risk. If you're happy to accept occasional property damage, which is really insignificant, and it might be 1,000 or 2,000. If it's 1,000 or 2,000, and I will stand on record on this, I've often said to clients, look, if the tree falls across your roof and crushes it and you end up with water damage in the house, it'll be the cheapest renovation you will ever get. Okay. Only time it's a problem if you've just renovated. But I'm just doing a reno on a house at the moment where tenants did some damage, and we'll do comfortably out of the renovation. We'll make money. I like it when they vacate having done vandalism. It's profitable. I make more money than if I rented them. So when a tree falls on a roof and you get water damage, if I had my big tree out the front fall on my house, I'd be sitting there thinking, thank goodness for that. Now I can claim the front veranda repairs and the roof repairs, and I'll get all of that covered all at once. We tend to worry about it. And I understand that the guys at UWI, and I think there's another insurer now doing the same, say, look, if you've got a big tree that can fall on your house, we won't cover for tree damage. Of course, if you do have trees, they'll still cover you, and it's probably $5 the difference. Why $5 the difference? Because that's the sort of cost averaged out amongst a whole pile of houses, whatever it might be. I'm just using 5 as an example. The reality is that I'd rather have the trees than have no tree that can fall on my house. And I say that to the point that I've got big trees overhanging the house and they're still getting bigger. So I'd rather that from my side and have the benefits of them. I think we get caught up with it. But what I was going to say is, let's think about insurable risks that happen that don't come from trees. I'm guessing that fire is a bigger risk. I'm guessing that flooding is a bigger risk. Water inundation is a bigger risk. Wind damage is a bigger risk without trees hitting it. All of those are bigger net costs. The biggest.
When you're considering wind damage, Mark, I think there's a definite argument to say that having trees around the building makes it less likely to be damaged by high wind.
You don't get structural damage from wind blow. That's right. So what happens is, of course, in a windstorm, the tree rocks backwards and forwards. It's absorbing energy. It's transferring it through the tree down to the ground. And so they're doing their job. They're protecting our buildings. And because every now and again in the process of protecting us, one of those great soldiers called a branch fails, we say, well, let's teach the army a lesson. Let's kill it. Let's get rid of the trees altogether. And it's absurd thinking, but it's the way that we've been taught to think. The reality is,
I think it's because we don't really carefully cost these and assess these things that we're looking at. So, for example, we're looking at a tree with an included junction, and we know that makes the tree more likely to fail. But how much more likely to fail? It doesn't mean that it will fail. So it's slightly less, slightly more likely to fail. And it might hit a building, but does that mean that that's catastrophic? Well, as you say, it may only be a few $100s worth of damage, or at the most an insurance claim. So I think that the problem is that we see this, we've got a problem, so without figuring out how much of a problem it is, it's easy to say, well, we've got a problem, we need to do something about it. And I think that that's an issue.
Yeah. So our two biggest single one-day insurable claims in Australia were both hail damage. The hail damage of 1991 to eastern suburbs of Sydney, and the, I'm going to be wrong on this probably, but it's 1980 something or other. I think it might have been 89. Hail damage to the Liverpool region. So you don't think of hail as being an issue. Again, areas that have trees over, and my car was in the eastern suburbs one, I didn't notice the hail damage until 4 days later. Why? I was in it at TAFE, playing microscopy, and my car was parked under a fig tree. Couldn't figure out when I got out there why there was littered foliage everywhere. Didn't even bother to put the two together. But the fig tree got hit by the hail. The fig tree absorbed a lot of the hail damage, and the car didn't get anywhere near as badly damaged as people that were parked, 20 meters away. And in fact, if you're ever driving during hail damage, and it's really fascinating to watch what people do. They look for garages, they look for commercial buildings that they can park their vehicle under, then they look for trees as the next option, and then they just stop and expect the damn thing to get ruined. So intuitively, we know that trees are of benefit, but we cut them down. So yeah, look, hopefully it's come across that I'm very pro-tree. That doesn't mean that getting rid of trees is a problem. It does mean that we need to be planting them. And that's by far the biggest issue of arboriculture, is that we're removing trees so much faster than we're replacing them. Doesn't matter what we do, we're going backwards. And a lot of that is because when we remove a tree, and there are good reasons to, we need to do it as part of development or whatever, we're only ever replacing, in most cases, like for like in terms of numbers, but not in terms of biomass or canopy, and we're way, way short as a result. And this is a phenomenon that's not just happening in Sydney. This is happening in every major city throughout Australia. It's happening, Mark, in Orange. In the new areas, you just see what happens and you think, my. It's happening in any developing city in the world. They got this problem of things going backwards as they do more development, trees go. So urban foresters around the world are battling this problem. And unfortunately, in the 1990s, risk came on. And when risk came in, prior to that, Mark, we would have been, as I said, scribing the edges of the wounds as an automatic process back in the late 1980s. That would have been the first treatment that we would have gone to, unless no one would have been talking about removing them. And oddly enough, I didn't know about included junctions and their failure back then, because we had really no knowledge of it. So we just ignored it. And I don't think we've made huge differences by being as acutely concerned. Not saying that we shouldn't be concerned, but as acutely concerned as we are. So anyhow, that's our trees and diseases for the block. Keep on having stuff coming in. Next block, Peter, I would like to do something a little different as well, if that's okay. And I'd like to have a look at just a key and see whether I can't help you better identify trees. So it is called Tips, Trees, Insects, Pests and Soils. So understanding what trees we've got. So I thought I might look at, and I know you've done it with Peter before, casuarinas and allocasuarinas, how to identify the difference between them, because they're such highly modified parts that can be a little difficult to the untrained eye. and we often don't get taught how to do that well. So
And I think it's very interesting because once you start looking at them and figuring it out, then it really opens up that that field. You can actually start to identify them.
at almost driving speed. That's right. I agree. And so just understanding some of those differences is really helpful and useful. So I'd like to spend 15 minutes or so looking at some of the bigger differences between casuarinas and other casuarinas, so you can feel a little bit more comfortable with identifying them as you're walking along. You guys happy with that?